Have you ever asked this question before? God, how could you let this happen? Maybe you didn't say it out loud, but deep in your heart, you've often wondered just why God? Maybe you've gone through something in your past, or maybe something you're going through right now, and it just doesn't make sense. And you wonder if God is really paying attention, if He's really good. Does He even exist? Does He care? I'll be honest with you, there have been moments in my own life where I've wrestled with those exact same questions. As a pastor, I've walked with families through heartbreaks that just don't seem fair at all. I've stood by parents who lost their newborn baby. I've seen young moms get hit with terminal cancer. I've heard stories of kids facing unthinkable abuse. And in those moments, I've asked, God, why? Why? And maybe you've had your own version of that. Today, maybe you're dealing with something that's left you feeling hurt and confused and disappointed, and you have doubt, and it's creeping in big time. Well, if that's where you're at, here's the good news. You're not alone. Over the last few weeks, we've been looking at the Apostle Paul, the guy who went from trying to destroy the church to becoming one of Jesus' most committed followers. But following Jesus didn't mean that life was easy for Paul. It actually brought on a storm of pain and persecution. And yet, Paul was very real about his struggles. He once wrote this to his friends in Corinth. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. Now, that doesn't sound much like a man full of faith and confidence, does it? That sounds more like someone who's at the end of their rope. But then Paul shifts and he says, but as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God, who raises the dead. And He did rescue us, and He will rescue us again. Paul didn't gain all the answers, but he did gain perspective. He realized that sometimes the only way to figure it all out is to stop trying to control things and to trust that God is good even when life doesn't feel good. And he doesn't stop there. He went to ask his friends, pray for us. In fact, he said, you are helping us by praying for us. You know, folks, that's like really powerful. Because one of the best ways to fight back against doubt and disappointment is to let your friends fight with you in prayer. Folks, if you've got 2 or 3 people who will pray for you when you're in the pit, you are never alone. And you will not be defeated. And if you don't have people like that, then ask God today. Maybe you need to ask Him right now, even in the midst of the group, silently to yourself, God, bring those type of people into my life. You see, through God's strength and the prayers of his friends, Paul developed a faith that could endure anything because he knew he wasn't alone. And so he told his friends, those called the Philippians, I hope you will never be ashamed, but will have enough courage so that Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. This is the same guy who sang worship songs from a prison floor, who shared Jesus with the guard that he was chained to 24 hours a day, who kept preaching the good news of Jesus, the gospel, even when it cost him everything. And that's the kind of hope I want for all of us. So today, whatever you're going through right now, whatever questions that are weighing on your heart, whatever burdens you're feeling, just know this trial won't last forever. And it cannot compare to the joy that's coming when you're face to face with Jesus. So stay strong, don't lose hope, and don't stop trusting even in the dark. Right now, I want you to hear from our worship pastor, Caleb Ferguson. Caleb is an awesome man of God, but a few years ago, he went through a trial that really shook his faith. And after Caleb shares, my friend Don will give us some helpful tools for managing the emotions that come with doubt and disappointment. So check this out.
My name is Caleb Ferguson. I'm the worship pastor at the JAR Community Church, and I've been here since 2018. Yeah, for me, I have experienced doubt and disappointment, and I think a lot of times they're not far from each other. In 2022, my wife Jamie and I got married, and it would be about a week later that my mother would unexpectedly pass by while my wife and I, we were on our honeymoon. It completely imploded my life. It stopped the vision or the fantasy of what I thought the future would be in that specific moment in my life. I just immediately started envisioning what a future would look like without my mom. There would be no grandma for me whenever I have children. There would be no more mom. There would be no more spouse to my father, mother to my brothers or sister. And I just started thinking immediately about the impact and envisioning that future, envisioning that life that has now changed, what that would look like. What I experienced the most in that moment, or at least initially, was the feeling of disappointment in God. My job primarily has been for the last 7 years worshiping God with music and leading others into a relationship with God through music. But in that moment, I had no desire to do that. In that season of life, I had no desire to stand on a stage and worship a God that had taken someone so dear from me. And so I started to doubt my purpose. I started to doubt the future. I started to not have a desire to worship God. And I started to doubt even the existence of God. I started to doubt my relationship with Him. And that was a really dark time. I immediately shut down as a person. The trajectory of what life was doing before, it completely stopped, it came to a halt. And what I started doing was isolating myself from everyone I knew, and at times even my wife Jamie. I would just go away. I would find times, almost anything that I could do to just be alone, because I just didn't want to deal with the noise. I didn't want to deal with people. I had such a frustration. I had such a bitterness that I would almost say is like a hatred, which is not churchy. I didn't want to be around them. I don't want to sugarcoat it either, but and it's almost everyone around me. And so isolation was the biggest thing for me. I just wanted to like barricade myself with distance from people. And so emotionally, physically, I didn't want to be around people. I think for me, I just like in the quiet, I thought like that was the best healing for me. But I think the problem that I started like after about like a year after, a year into my sadness, I guess, is that you distance yourself so much from people that when you do need help, there's no one around. When you're calling out for others, for your support and for your community, there's really no one around. God also revealed to me something in that time too, that there is a hurt that exists within the confines of love. That we can hurt so much because we love so much, And the measure and the depth of that is determined by how willing we are to love others. And I think that I hurt so much because I loved so much. I loved my mom so much. And so I hurt so much because of that. I think I would lie if I said like I would never doubt again, or like I would never experience the feeling of doubt, even doubting my purpose or doubting what I'm doing. I would probably be lying if I said like I'm never going to experience that, or I've never felt that since. But my experience of doubt is not an indicator to me that God doesn't exist. If I didn't experience the things that I did, and I didn't have the journey that I had, there would be no reason for me to follow God. If it was all laid out in front of me and I knew the answer to everything, there would be no reason for me to have faith in God. And you know what? Even if I'm wrong and God doesn't exist, none of this matters. I would rather live a life of hope. I'd rather live a life in believing that He does exist and that there is purpose behind it. That this life is more than just disappointment. I'd rather live that life than the alternative. Life isn't easy. It's not. I think there's a misconception that we follow Christ or that we do the right thing, and that by doing those things, that we went to church on Sunday, that we went to small group, we volunteered for the month, that life is going to be, or we tithed, that life is going to be infinitely better than what it was before we did those things. That life is now going to be more grandiose, that we're going to walk on rainbows because we're following Christ. I think in a lot of ways it's you feel a lot more pressure of life because you're going against the current of life. And so I don't think that disappointment and discouragement and doubt is ever going to be something that you're going to be able to live without and not experience. But I think what I would encourage people to remind themselves in moments of disappointment would be that having doubt, experiencing disappointment is not an indicator that God isn't real or that God doesn't love you. Especially doubt. I don't think that anyone is actually 100% on anything. But what I would encourage people to do is just to really try, to not let the evil one discourage you through that doubt, and to not live in that doubt, to not live in your discouragement, your disappointment, your anger, and your sadness, because that will consume you. So I wouldn't look at life as though you have to move on from it. Moving on doesn't address the issue, it just is getting out of there. It's just not dealing with it. It's not addressing it and facing it. I would encourage people to live on through it, walk through it, and live on with it. I think we're scared of doing that, but by doing that, we can experience the beauty that is on the other side. It's been 3 years since my mom's passed, and today, my wife Jamie and I, we have a little boy on the way, and we are excited that we have our first child is on the way, and that God has blessed us in this manner, and it's an absolute joy. And although there is a lot of sadness knowing that my mom won't be here, but there's also joy. There's also beauty, and there's amazing things that are to come. There's hope.
Hi, I'm Dawn, and I want to talk to you a little bit about doubt and disappointment. Doubt and disappointment are part of the human experience, and they can often be connected, and sometimes they feed off of each other. Doubt is the voice inside of us that questions, is this the right path? Am I enough? Is God really good? And disappointment is the sting of unmet expectations, the letdown when reality doesn't quite align with our plans. It can arise from other people, from circumstances, or from ourselves. And sometimes we're disappointed in how something turned out, and other times we're disappointed in who we turned out to be in that moment. You know, I've struggled with doubt and disappointment myself. When my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, I had complete faith that God would heal her. I had just lost my dad to cancer a few months before that, and I was confident that God would restore her and extend her life. He did restore her in a way, but it wasn't how I planned or wanted. She had cancer for several months, did the treatment, and went into remission. But the remission was only for 6 weeks. Then the cancer returned full force. It wasn't 5 months later, and she died. I was so disappointed. I gave everything to God. I worked in ministry at the time. I took care of both of my sick parents, all while raising my family. I felt like I gave God so much, and I tried to follow his ways. Why didn't he heal her? He did it for other people. Why not my mom? Why did she have to be gone from this world? Then I started questioning and doubting, is God really good? Maybe you've struggled with this same concept. You know, you tried really hard to get that job, but it just didn't work out, or you gave your all to that relationship, but it still ended. You try so hard to fit in, but you still just feel like an outsider. Well, I definitely don't have a magical formula to help with doubt and disappointment, but I do know that God is faithful. He is faithful in the hurt, in the doubt, and in the disappointment. When things don't go according to plan, we just have to remember that God doesn't promise everything will always go according to our plan, but he does promise his presence. Doubt can be useful actually, but only when we meet it with honesty and courage rather than avoiding it. God is big enough for your questions and your doubt. He's waiting for you to bring those things to him. And disappointment is also a part of life. It will happen, but you can talk to God about it and ask him how to help you and how to guide you in that. Also, you can talk to somebody that you trust about what's going on. A friend, a family member, a counselor, just someone that'll listen and validate your experience. The issues don't always need to be solved. Sometimes they just need to be felt, named, and given space. Because the experience of doubt and disappointment is universal for all of us. There are some things that we'll never understand on this side of heaven, but I do know that throughout it all, God is faithful. He is still good, and he'll never leave you. So bring all the mess, the doubt, and the disappointment to him. A great way to get the doubt and disappointment out of your head is by journaling. To help you do that, we've provided a daily journal that corresponds with a daily video from someone at the Jar. In these videos, people from the Jar will share about a Bible verse relating to what the topic is and what it means to them. So be sure to check out the videos and engage with the journal. The QR code is on your handout, and you can check the daily video out. Have a great week, everybody, and know that you're loved.